Mother and twins found dead on the same day. What happened next will leave you speechless. Before we begin, drop a comment below to tell us where you're watching from. If you believe the truth always comes out, like and subscribe. Now sit back and enjoy the story. Emily Carter was a pillar of this community. A dedicated school teacher, she taught generations of children at Willowbrook Elementary School, instilling in them not just knowledge but also kindness and resilience. She was known for her warm smile, her calm demeanor, and her fierce devotion to her family, especially her twin 10-year-olds, Lucas and Lily. Lucas and Lily were inseparable, their bond as siblings almost legendary in the town. They shared everything, secrets, dreams, even an unspoken language only they understood. Their laughter echoed through the playgrounds and their curiosity about the world seemed boundless. It wasn't unusual to see them exploring the woods behind their house or poring over old books in the library. But on a Tuesday morning in late October, the tranquility of Willowbrook shattered like glass. It began with a knock on Sheriff Harold Grayson's door before dawn. He opened it to find Emily's husband, Daniel Carter, pale and trembling, clutching his phone. "Something's wrong," Daniel stammered. "I can't wake them up." Sheriff Grayson followed him to the Carters' home, a charming white clapboard house with blue shutters, now bathed in eerie silence. Inside, he found Emily lying peacefully in bed, her face serene as if asleep. But there was no pulse. Upstairs, Lucas and Lily lay side by side in their shared room, tucked under the same quilt, their hands intertwined. Like their mother, they appeared unharmed, but lifeless. The cause of death baffled the coroner. No signs of trauma, poisoning, or illness could explain why three healthy individuals had died simultaneously. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some whispered of carbon monoxide leaks, though none were detected. Others spoke of curses or spectral forces, pointing to the town's dark history buried deep in its archives. As news broke, shockwaves rippled through Willowbrook. Neighbors gathered outside the Carters' home, lighting candles and leaving flowers. Yet amid the grief, questions lingered, unanswered and unsettling. How did Emily and her twins die? Was it coincidence, accident, or something more sinister? What connection existed between their deaths? Daniel Carter, a reserved man in his early 50s who works as an architect. Devoted to his wife and children, he struggles to process their sudden loss while grappling with guilt over things left unsaid. Sheriff Harold Grayson, a grizzled veteran of law enforcement nearing retirement age. Known for his integrity and empathy, he's determined to uncover the truth despite whispers of supernatural interference. Maggie Winslow, Emily's older sister and closest confidant. Maggie moved away decades ago but returned frequently to visit. She harbors a secret about their childhood, one tied to Willowbrook's past, that may hold answers. Dr. Evelyn Marsh, the town's coroner and a historian fascinated by local legends. Her scientific mind clashes with the superstitions swirling around the case, yet she senses there's more to the story than meets the eye. Old Man Hargrove, a reclusive clockmaker who lives on the outskirts of town. His shop, filled with antique timepieces, has been a fixture in Willowbrook for decades. Locals avoid him, claiming he's odd, but his knowledge of the town's darker secrets makes him indispensable. On the morning of the deaths, every clock in Willowbrook stopped at exactly 3:17 a.m., even digital ones. Residents dismissed it as a freak power surge, but some believe it's a sign from beyond. Old Man Hargrove insists clocks don't stop without reason. They mark moments when fate intervenes. In the days leading up to her death, Emily exhibited strange behavior. She spent hours researching old family records at the library, asking questions about ancestors no one remembered. Maggie recalls Emily mentioning unfinished business during one of their last conversations. Lucas and Lily had discovered an abandoned well in the woods behind their house. Friends say they claimed it was haunted, though they laughed about it. A notebook found in their room contains cryptic drawings and phrases scrawled in childish handwriting. The water remembers. Willowbrook has a long-forgotten tragedy involving another set of twins who vanished mysteriously in the 1800s. Town lore says their spirits haunt the area, seeking justice or revenge. Could Emily and her children have unwittingly awakened this curse? The morning after the tragedy, retired detective Harold Bennett stands on the porch of the Carter home. his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his overcoat. At 72, he's weathered and wiry, with sharp blue eyes that seem to pierce through walls. He'd been friends with Daniel Carter for decades, until cancer claimed Daniel 5 years ago. And now, standing here amidst the somber gathering of neighbors, Harold feels an unshakable sense of duty. This wasn't just a case, it was personal. Sheriff Grayson greets him with a weary nod. "Harold, I know you've hung up your badge, but we could use your help. Something about this, it doesn't sit right." Harold steps inside, taking in the stillness of the house. It's as if time itself has frozen within these walls. In the office where Emily was found, her desk is cluttered with papers, lesson plans, sketches of family outings, and notes scrawled hastily in her elegant handwriting. Her laptop sits open, its screen dark. A half-empty mug of tea rests beside her hand, cold to the touch. Upstairs, Harold pauses at the doorway of Lucas and Lily's room. The twins lie motionless under their quilt, their small hands intertwined. Their faces are serene, almost peaceful, as though they'd simply drifted off together. Harold kneels beside them, studying every detail. Their posture, the faint smile lingering on Lily's lips, the way Lucas's fingers curl protectively around hers. "It's unnatural," Sheriff Grayson mutters behind him. No marks, no signs of distress. Just gone. Back downstairs, Harold pores over the coroner's preliminary report alongside Dr. Evelyn Marsh, who looks equally troubled. "No toxins, no diseases, no physical trauma," she says, shaking her head. "Their hearts stop beating simultaneously, but there's no explanation why. No known medical condition could cause something like this. Not all three of them at once." "What about environmental factors?" Harold asks. "Carbon monoxide? Electrical anomalies?" "Checked everything," Sheriff Grayson interjects. "The power grid shows no spikes or surges. CO detectors were clean. Even the clock stopping. It defies logic. Digital devices don't just shut down like that without external interference." Evelyn hesitates before adding, "There's something else. Their vitals suggest they weren't suffering when they died. If anything, they seemed at peace, almost as if they chose to let go." Harold frowns. "Chose to let go? That's not something you can prove scientifically." "No," Evelyn admits, "but it's what the evidence points to. And then there's this." She pulls out a photograph taken during the autopsy, a close-up of Emily's left palm. Etched faintly into her skin is a symbol, two overlapping circles forming an infinity sign, surrounded by tiny dots resembling stars. "That wasn't there before," Harold murmurs. "Where did it come from?" Evelyn shakes her head. "It appeared post-mortem, same with the twins. They each have the same mark, in the exact same place." Later that evening, Harold visits Maggie Winslow, Emily's older sister, at her rented cottage on the edge of town. She's sipping tea, staring blankly out the window when he arrives. Her eyes are red-rimmed, her face pale. "I need to understand what Emily was working on," Harold says gently. "Did she mention anything unusual recently? Anything out of the ordinary?" Maggie sighs, rubbing her temples. "She called me last week, said she'd found something strange in our family records. Something about the bond that never breaks. I thought she meant the connection between her and the twins, but now..." She trails off, pulling a leather-bound journal from her bag. "This belonged to our grandmother," Maggie explains, handing it to Harold. Inside, the pages are filled with faded ink and sketches, maps, genealogical charts, and cryptic notes. One page catches Harold's eye, a drawing of the same double-circle symbol etched into Emily's palm. Beneath it, written in shaky script, is a single phrase. "When the water speaks, the debt must be paid." "The water?" Harold echoes. Maggie nods grimly. "There's an old well in the woods behind their house. Emily mentioned it to me once. Said the kids had been obsessed with it lately. They thought it was haunted." Determined to piece together the puzzle, Harold pays a visit to Old Man Hargrove's clock shop on the outskirts of town. The air inside smells of oil and dust, and shelves groan under the weight of countless ticking timepieces. Hargrove himself sits hunched over a workbench, repairing a delicate pocket watch. "You're wondering about the clocks," Hargrove says without looking up. His voice is gravelly, tinged with resignation. Among other things, Harold replies, what do you know about what happened to the Carters? Hargrove sets down his tools and fixes Harold with a piercing gaze. Time isn't just numbers on a dial, detective. It's a force, a river flowing forward, backward, sideways. Sometimes it stops. When it does, it leaves its mark. And the symbol on their palms? Harold presses. Hargrove leans back, stroking his beard. That's older than any of us, older than this town. It's a seal, a binding. Some say it ties souls together across lifetimes. Others claim it's a warning. Beware the debts of those who came before you. Harold narrows his eyes. Debts? What kind of debts? Hargrove shrugs. The kind that demand payment in blood. Harold's investigation takes him deeper into Emily Carter's life, revealing layers of mystery that stretch back years. The more he uncovers, the more the line between reality and myth begins to blur. At the town library, Harold sifts through old records and newspaper clippings related to Emily's earlier years in Boston. He learns she was not just a casual enthusiast of folklore, but a dedicated researcher who delved into obscure legends about shared fates and eternal bonds. One article quotes her saying, "Some connections are stronger than death itself. They bind us across lifetimes, shaping our choices and sealing our destinies." A librarian recalls how Emily would spend hours poring over ancient texts, often requesting interlibrary loans for books on esoteric subjects like ancestral curses, spirit pacts, and symbols of infinity. Her fascination seemed almost obsessive, a quest rather than mere curiosity. She believed there was truth hidden in those stories, the librarian tells Harold. Something personal, maybe. She never said what it was, but you could see it in her eyes, like she was searching for answers to something only she understood. Harold wonders if this obsession led Emily down a dangerous path. Could she have stumbled upon something she wasn't meant to uncover? Maggie Winslow shares another unsettling detail during a late-night conversation at her cottage. Emily started having these dreams a few months ago, she says, her voice trembling. She'd wake up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, talking about clocks stopping all at once. She said time felt wrong, like it was folding in on itself. And rivers running backward, Harold prompts, recalling Hargrove's cryptic warning about time as a river. Maggie nods. Yes, she mentioned that too. Said she saw water flowing uphill, carrying whispers from the past. And always there were figures watching her, shadows without faces, standing just out of reach. She ever mention who or what they might be? No, Maggie replies softly, but she said they felt familiar, like echoes of people she'd known, or maybe ancestors she'd never met. Harold makes a mental note of this. The recurring imagery of stopped clocks, reversed rivers, and shadowy watchers suggests a pattern, one tied to both Emily's research and Willowbrook's dark history. The next morning, Harold visits several neighbors who live near the Carters' home. Many report seeing unusual lights flickering in the woods behind their property in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. It started small, says Mrs. Abernathy, an elderly woman who lives 2 houses down. Just faint glimmers moving between the trees. Then it got brighter, like lanterns swinging back and forth. But when we went to check, there was nothing there. Another neighbor, Tom Riley, adds, Lucas and Lily used to talk about it. They said the well was haunted, that the light came from spirits trying to get their attention. We thought they were just kids being kids, letting their imaginations run wild. Now, he trails off, shaking his head. Harold decides to investigate the woods himself. Accompanied by Sheriff Grayson, he ventures into the dense forest, following a narrow trail that winds toward the abandoned well. The air grows colder the deeper they go, and the scent of damp earth fills their lungs. When they reach the clearing where the well stands, Harold feels an inexplicable chill. The structure is ancient, its stone walls crumbling and covered in moss. Carved into the rim of the well is the same double circle symbol found on Emily and the twins' palms. This thing hasn't been used in decades, Grayson says, peering inside. The shaft plunges into darkness, the bottom obscured by shadows. Harold kneels beside the well, examining the carvings more closely. Beneath the symbol, faint letters are etched into the stone. Qui tacet consentire videtur. What does it mean? Grayson asks. He who is silent is taken to consent, Harold translates grimly. It's Latin, a legal phrase but also a warning. As Harold pieces together the clues, a chilling narrative begins to emerge. Emily's research into folklore hinted at forces beyond human understanding, forces capable of binding souls across generations. Her dreams suggested she was aware of, or even part of, something supernatural, something tied to the land and the well. The strange lights in the woods and the twins' belief in hauntings point to activity around the well, possibly linked to the symbol and the cryptic message carved into its rim. Could the well be a conduit, a doorway between worlds? And if so, what price had Emily and her family paid for crossing it? As Harold delves further into the lives of Lucas and Lily, he begins to understand just how extraordinary their connection truly was. Through interviews with teachers, friends, and neighbors, a portrait emerges of two children whose bond defied explanation. A unity so profound it seemed almost otherworldly. Mrs. Peterson, their fifth-grade teacher, recalls how Lucas and Lily communicated without speaking. They'd finish each other's sentences like they were reading each other's minds, she tells Harold. It wasn't just twins' intuition. It was deeper than that. They shared everything: laughter, tears, even pain. She recounts an incident from earlier in the school year when Lucas fell ill during recess. By the time he was sent home, Lily had already begun showing symptoms: fever, chills, fatigue, all before anyone could tell her what had happened to her brother. They weren't just siblings, Mrs. Peterson adds softly. They were inseparable, like two halves of the same person. Other accounts echo this sentiment. Friends describe how the twins always seemed to know what the other was thinking or feeling, whether it was choosing the same book at the library or drawing eerily similar pictures during art class. Even arguments between them were rare. If one was upset, the other would instinctively comfort them, no words needed. But it's not just their closeness that unsettles Harold. It's the way their bond intersected with Emily's fascination with folklore and mythology. Had she seen something in their connection? Something supernatural? One anecdote stands out among the rest, sending a shiver down Harold's spine. During a visit to Willowbrook Elementary School, he speaks with Sarah Chen, a classmate of Lucas and Lily, who sits quietly on the playground swings, clutching her backpack tightly. Did they ever talk about anything strange? Harold asks gently. Sarah hesitates, then nods. A few weeks ago, we were talking about dreams. Everyone said boring stuff, like flying or meeting famous people. But Lucas and Lily, she trails off, biting her lip. What did they say? They said they dreamed about dying together, Sarah whispers. Not like being scared or sad. They said it felt peaceful, like they were leaving this world but going somewhere better. Harold leans forward, his heart pounding. Did they mention where they thought they'd go? Sarah shakes her head. Just that they'd wake up again, together. The weight of her words settles over Harold as he thanks her and walks away. The dream feels less like coincidence and more like premonition, an eerie foreshadowing of their deaths. But what could have caused such visions? And why had they spoken of waking up somewhere else? Later that evening, Harold pores over Emily's journal again, searching for any reference to the twins' dreams. He finds a single entry dated 3 weeks before their deaths. Lucas and Lily are different. I see it now. Their bond isn't just love. It's something ancient, something primal. It's as if they carry pieces of a soul that existed long before them. The stories I've read, they speak of twins bound by fate, destined to fulfill a purpose greater than themselves. What is their purpose? And why do I feel like I'm running out of time to protect them? Harold reads the passage aloud to Maggie Winslow, who listens with wide eyes. She knew, Maggie murmurs. Emily knew something was coming for them. But what? Harold presses. And how does it tie back to the well, the symbol, and those strange lights in the woods? Maggie stares at the floor, lost in thought. Finally, she says, there's one more thing you should know. When we were kids, Grandma used to tell us stories about the Twin Keepers. She said they were chosen guardians meant to bridge worlds, but the price was high. Too high. Bridge worlds? Harold echoes. You mean like life and death? Maggie nods grimly. That's why I think Emily started digging into our family history. She must have suspected Lucas and Lily weren't ordinary twins. She wanted to protect them, but maybe she couldn't. The attic of the Carter home is dimly lit, its air thick with dust and the scent of aged wood. Harold steps carefully among forgotten relics, old furniture draped in sheets, stacks of yellowed books, and trunks filled with memories long buried. It's here, tucked away in a shadowy corner, that he discovers an antique clock unlike anything he's ever seen. The clock is ornate, its hand-carved mahogany frame adorned with intricate patterns resembling vines and stars. At its center, etched into the glass face, is the now familiar double circle symbol. The hands are frozen at 11:59 p.m., the exact time of death for Emily and her twins, as confirmed by the coroner's report. Harold examines it closely, noting how heavy it feels in his hands despite its modest size. There's something unsettling about it, as though it hums faintly with energy, or perhaps memory. He opens the back panel to investigate further and finds a small compartment containing a folded piece of parchment. Unfolding the brittle paper, Harold reads the faded handwriting within. It's a letter written by Emily's great-grandmother, dated October 1873. To those who inherit this burden, I write these words not out of malice but out of love, hoping to spare you from the fate that has haunted our family for generations. Long ago, our ancestors made a pact with the Keeper of Time. In exchange for extraordinary lives, riches, talents, bonds unbreakable, they agreed to share a single destiny. When their hour comes, they will leave this world together, unable to escape the tether that binds them. Beware the clock. It marks not only time but the moment when the debt must be paid. Once bound, there is no breaking free. Do not let pride or curiosity lead you astray. Destroy it if you can, but know that doing so may bring ruin upon us all. With sorrow and hope, Margaret Winslow. Harold sits back on his heels, his mind racing. The letter confirms what he suspected. Emily and her children were part of a legacy far older and darker than anyone realized. But what exactly was the Keeper of Time? And why had their ancestors agreed to such a pact? He takes the clock downstairs to show Maggie Winslow, whose face goes pale the moment she sees it. I remember hearing stories about that clock, she whispers, reaching out hesitantly to touch its surface. Grandma said it brought both blessings and curses. She told me never to look for it. It was supposed to have been destroyed after Margaret wrote that letter. Why wasn't it? Harold asks. Maggie shakes her head. I don't know. Maybe someone thought keeping it hidden was safer than destroying it. Or maybe, she trails off, her voice trembling, maybe the curse wouldn't let them. As Harold reflects on the letter, he begins to see parallels between the legend and Emily's life. Her career as a beloved teacher, her deep connection with her children, even her fascination with folklore, all could be seen as manifestations of the extraordinary lives promised by the pact. But the price was steep. Bound by the clock, Emily and her twins shared not just joy, but also tragedy. Their inseparable bond became a literal tether, ensuring they would leave this world together when the time came. What triggered the curse now? Harold wonders aloud. Was it something Emily did? Something Lucas and Lily uncovered? Maggie looks uneasy. Emily mentioned strange dreams and feelings of urgency in the weeks before it happened. What if she tried to break the pact, to protect them? Harold nods slowly. If the curse couldn't be broken, then trying might have sealed their fate. Before leaving the house, Harold glances once more at the clock. Its frozen hands seem to mock him, whispering secrets he cannot yet decipher. Who or what is the Keeper of Time? And does it still watch over the Carters, waiting for the next generation to fulfill or break the ancient pact? One thing is certain, the answers lie deeper than the well, darker than the woods, and older than the town itself. The woods behind the Carter property are eerily quiet as Harold steps off the narrow trail, guided by the faint glow of his flashlight. The air feels heavier here, charged with an energy that prickles at the back of his neck. He clutches Emily's journal in one hand and a small satchel containing the antique clock in the other, determined to uncover the truth hidden beneath the forest floor. Harold's breath catches as he pushes through a thicket of brambles and finds himself standing before an ancient stone circle. The stones rise like jagged teeth from the earth, their surfaces weathered but still bearing faint carvings. His heart pounds as he recognizes the symbols. They match the ones etched into the clock in the well. Double circles surrounded by stars, along with cryptic runes he doesn't yet understand. At the center of the circle lies a patch of disturbed soil, darker than the surrounding ground. Kneeling, Harold brushes away leaves and dirt to reveal a shallow grave. Inside, he discovers fragments of broken clocks and watches, their mechanisms rusted and frozen mid-tick. Among them are faded photographs of families, men, women, children, all smiling, all seemingly ordinary. But Harold notices something chilling. Each family shares one thing in common. They are all depicted with twins. Harold sifts through the remnants, piecing together the story they tell. Each photograph is dated, spanning centuries, and each date corresponds to a local legend or unsolved mystery involving sudden, simultaneous deaths within families. One image shows a couple and their twin daughters who vanished without a trace in 1823. Another depicts a farmer and his twin sons who were found lifeless in their barn in 1916. They were bound too, Harold mutters under his breath. All of them. The realization sends a shiver down his spine. The curse tied to the clock wasn't unique to Emily and her family. It had claimed countless others over the years. Each generation paid the same price. Extraordinary lives, shared fates, and ultimately a collective departure from this world. But why, and what purpose did it serve? As Harold studies the grave, he becomes aware of a low hum emanating from the stones around him. It grows louder, resonating in his chest until it feels like the very air is vibrating. Shadows flicker at the edges of his vision, though no light source explains their movement. Then voices, soft overlapping whispers, begin to seep into his mind. Time flows both ways. The debt must be paid. We chose this path. Harold grips the flashlight tighter, his pulse racing. Who's there? He demands, his voice echoing unnaturally in the stillness. The whispers coalesce into a single voice, clear and cold. You seek answers, but do you truly wish to know? From the darkness emerges a figure cloaked in shadow, its form shifting and indistinct. Its eyes gleam like embers, piercing through Harold's resolve. I need to know, Harold says firmly, though his knees threaten to buckle. What happened to Emily and her children? What is this curse? The figure tilts its head, studying him. They fulfilled their part of the pact, their legacy complete, as will yours, should you choose to continue. My legacy? Harold echoes, confused. You carry the burden now, the figure replies. The clock has chosen you. Before Harold can respond, the figure vanishes, leaving him alone amidst the stones. The hum fades and the woods return to silence, though the oppressive weight remains. He looks down at the antique clock in his hands, its frozen hands glowing faintly in the moonlight. For the first time, he notices that the second hand twitches slightly, as if struggling against some unseen force. Harold knows he faces a decision: destroy the clock and risk unleashing whatever malevolent power binds these families, or leave it intact and allow the cycle to continue. Either choice carries consequences far beyond his understanding. The sudden gust of wind sends leaves spiraling around Harold, biting at his skin with an unnatural chill. He freezes, his grip tightening on the antique clock as the sound of laughter, soft, melodic, and unmistakably childlike, fills the air. It's joined by a voice that sends a pang through his chest, Emily's. We're free now. Her words are barely audible, carried on the breeze like a sigh. Yet they resonate deeply, echoing not just in his ears, but in his soul. The laughter fades into silence, leaving Harold standing alone once more amidst the ancient stones. For a fleeting second, Harold feels it, a sense of peace, profound and unshakable. It's as though the weight of centuries has lifted, dissolving into the ether. But then doubt creeps in. Free? From what? And why does he still feel the oppressive pull of the curse clinging to him, even now? He looks down at the clock again, its second hand twitching erratically. The faint glow emanating from its face seems brighter than before, pulsing rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Harold realizes with growing dread that the object isn't merely a relic, it's alive, feeding off the energy of those bound by its power. And now, inexplicably, it's chosen him. Harold kneels back beside the shallow grave, his mind racing. If Emily and her children truly are free, does that mean their deaths fulfilled the pact entirely? Or is this simply another phase in the cycle? A temporary release before the next generation inherits the burden? He sifts through the broken clocks and watches scattered within the grave, noticing something new. Each fragment bears traces of the double circle symbol, etched or engraved onto gears, dials, and casings. These weren't ordinary timepieces. They were vessels, conduits for whatever force sustained the curse. Destroying them must have been part of breaking the tether, but only temporarily. The photographs tell a similar story. Each family depicted had tried and failed to sever the bond permanently. Their sacrifices delayed the inevitable, allowing brief moments of freedom before the cycle began anew. But freedom for whom? For the cursed families? Or for the keeper of time itself? As if sensing his turmoil, the shadowy figure reappears, its form flickering between solidity and smoke. Its ember-like eyes fix on Harold, burning with both menace and pity. "You misunderstand," it says, its voice low and resonant. "Freedom is not escape, it is acceptance. To destroy the clock is to sever the threads that bind you all. But beware, some bonds exist beyond time itself. Breaking them may unravel more than you intend." "What do you mean?" Harold demands, his voice trembling. "What happens if I destroy it?" The figure tilts its head, studying him intently. "Time flows both ways, mortal. To erase the past is to rewrite the present. Are you prepared to face the consequences?" Before Harold can respond, the figure extends a shadowy hand toward the clock. The device shudders violently in his grasp, its mechanisms grinding, as though resisting destruction. The second hand spins wildly, faster and faster, until it stops abruptly at midnight. Then silence. Harold stares at the clock, its frozen hands casting long shadows across the ground. He knows what he must do, but the cost weighs heavily on him. Destroying the clock might free future generations from the curse, but it could also unleash chaos, unraveling the delicate balance between worlds. Or perhaps freedom isn't about breaking the bond at all. Perhaps it's about understanding it, accepting it, and finding meaning within it. As the first rays of dawn filter through the trees, Harold makes his choice. As dawn breaks over the forest, Harold sits cross-legged in the center of the stone circle, the cursed clock resting in his lap. His mind races as he pieces together fragments of Emily's life, the legends surrounding the clock, and the eerie discoveries in the woods. Slowly, painfully, the horrifying truth begins to crystallize. Harold flips through Emily's journal once more, his eyes landing on entries that now seem hauntingly prescient. She had written about dreams of clocks stopping, rivers running backward, and shadowy figures watching her from afar. But she also mentioned a growing sense of responsibility, an unshakable feeling that something was expected of her. He remembers Maggie's words. "Grandma said it brought both blessings and curses. She told me never to look for it. It was supposed to have been destroyed after Margaret wrote that letter." But the clock wasn't destroyed. It survived, passed down through generations like a ticking time bomb waiting to detonate. And when Emily inherited it, she became its unwitting guardian, a keeper bound by bloodline to maintain its power. The realization hits Harold like a freight train. By hiding the clock in her attic, Emily sealed not only her own fate, but that of her children. Harold recalls the whispers from the shadowy figure. "To destroy the clock is to sever the threads that bind you all. But beware, some bonds exist beyond time itself. Breaking them may unravel more than you intend." The curse wasn't just a punishment, it was a system, a delicate balance maintained by the clock itself. Each generation that inherited it contributed to its energy, feeding it with their lives, their connections, their sacrifices. The extraordinary talents and bonds experienced by the cursed families weren't gifts, they were payments, offerings made to sustain the mechanism. And now Harold understands why the twins' bond was so profound. They weren't simply siblings. They were living conduits of the curse, amplifying its power through their inseparable connection. Their deaths weren't random or tragic. They were inevitable, part of the cycle designed to keep the clock alive. Emily hadn't known the full extent of what she carried. At first, she likely saw the clock as a family heirloom, a relic of her ancestors' eccentricity. But as she delved deeper into folklore and uncovered the legend of the Keeper of Time, she began to suspect the truth. Her research, her strange dreams, her obsession with the well, all pointed to one conclusion. The clock was central to the curse, and she was its unwilling custodian. Her decision to hide it in the attic wasn't negligence. It was desperation. She must have believed that keeping it out of sight would protect her family from its influence. But instead, she ensured their fates were intertwined even more tightly. By shielding the clock, she allowed it to grow stronger, drawing strength from her love for Lucas and Lily, from their unbreakable bond, until it consumed them entirely. Harold stares at the clock, its frozen hands casting long shadows across the ground. He knows what he must do, but the choice feels impossible. Destroying the clock could break the curse forever, freeing future generations from its grip. Yet the shadowy figure's warning echoes in his mind. Breaking them may unravel more than you intend. What if destroying the clock doesn't end the curse, but instead unleashes something far worse? What if the threads it binds are not just the fates of cursed families, but the fabric of reality itself? For a moment, Harold considers leaving the clock intact, allowing the cycle to continue. After all, isn't acceptance part of freedom? Isn't understanding the bond enough to find peace within it? But then he thinks of Emily, of Lucas and Lily, of all the families whose lives were consumed by this ancient pact. He thinks of Maggie still grieving, haunted by questions she'll never fully answer. And he thinks of himself, holding the cursed object in trembling hands, knowing the burden has shifted to him. With a deep breath, Harold makes his decision. Harold's thoughts race as he pieces together the final, devastating implications of the curse. The twins' extraordinary bond, a connection so profound it seemed almost otherworldly, wasn't just a natural phenomenon or a quirk of fate. It was a vulnerability, a crack in their defenses that allowed the clock's influence to seep deeper into their lives than anyone could have anticipated. Lucas and Lily weren't merely bound to each other. They were bound to the clock itself, their shared soul acting as a conduit for its power. Their inseparability amplified the curse's hold over them, making them especially susceptible to its pull. When the clock stopped at 11:59 p.m., it didn't just mark the end of their time on Earth. It triggered the release of their souls from the tether that had kept them tied to this world. But freedom came at a terrible cost. The act of severing the bond required their physical deaths, ensuring they would leave this life together, just as they had dreamed. Emily's death followed because her fate was inexorably linked to theirs. As their mother, in the current keeper of the clock, she was the anchor holding them all together. Once the twin souls were freed, hers could not remain behind. The serene expressions on their faces make sense now. They hadn't been victims of violence or suffering. They had been released, their spirits finally untethered from the weight of the curse. "We're free now." Emily's whisper echoes in Harold's mind, clearer than ever. Harold feels a pang of sorrow mixed with awe. The curse wasn't just a malevolent force, it was a system designed to maintain balance, however cruelly. The families who fell victim to it weren't chosen at random. They were selected because of their extraordinary bonds, their ability to sustain the clock's power through love, sacrifice, and unity. And yet there was a kind of mercy in it too. The curse ensured that those bound by it would never face loss alone. Parents and children, siblings and lovers, all left this world together, sparing them the agony of separation. For Lucas and Lily, dying side by side was not a tragedy, but a fulfillment of their shared destiny. But Harold can't shake the feeling that this mercy is hollow. Freedom should not come at such a high price. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, casting golden light across the stone circle, Harold feels the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He understands now why Emily hid the clock, why she tried to shield her family from its truth. She believed ignorance was safer than knowledge, silence better than confrontation. But Harold knows better. Ignoring the curse won't make it go away. Hiding the clock only delays the inevitable, allowing it to grow stronger with each passing generation. If he leaves it intact, the cycle will continue, claiming more lives, shattering more families. Destroying the clock is the only way to break the chain, but doing so carries risks he can't fully comprehend. The shadowy figure's warning replays in his mind. Breaking them may unravel more than you intend. What lies beyond the threads of fate? What happens when the keeper of time is no longer needed? Harold takes a deep breath, steadying himself. He thinks of Emily, of Lucas and Lily, of all the families buried beneath the earth, their stories etched into fragments of broken clocks and faded photographs. He thinks of Maggie, carrying the burden of unanswered questions, and he thinks of himself, holding the cursed object in trembling hands, knowing the choice rests with him. With resolve hardening in his chest, Harold stands. "It ends here," he whispers, gripping the clock tightly. The weight of the clock's destruction settles over Harold as he returns to Willowbrook, its remnants safely locked away in a sturdy case in the trunk of his car. He knows what he must do next: share the truth with the community and ensure that no one else will ever fall victim to the curse again. Yet as he steps into the town square, he feels the familiar ache of doubt creeping in. Would anyone believe him? Or would they dismiss his story as the ramblings of an old man clinging to superstition? That evening, Harold gathers the townsfolk at the local church hall, a place steeped in history and memory. Neighbors sit shoulder to shoulder, their faces etched with grief and curiosity. Maggie sits in the front row, her eyes red-rimmed but steady, clutching Emily's journal in trembling hands. Sheriff Grayson stands near the back, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Even Old Man Hargrove is there, perched on a wooden bench, his piercing gaze fixed on Harold. Harold clears his throat, holding up the antique clock for all to see. Its once ornate frame is now shattered, its gears and mechanisms reduced to jagged fragments. "This," he begins, his voice steady despite the knot of emotion in his chest, "is why Emily and her children are gone. This cursed object bound them together, not just in life, but in death. It tied their fates across generations, demanding payment in exchange for extraordinary bonds." He recounts everything he has uncovered: the ancient pact with the keeper of time, the gravesite in the woods, the whispers from the shadowy figure, and the horrifying realization that the clock's power thrived on love, connection, and sacrifice. As he speaks, murmurs ripple through the crowd, some skeptical, others visibly shaken. "You think this is real?" calls out a voice from the back. It's Mrs. Abernathy, the elderly neighbor who reported seeing strange lights in the woods. "Curses and pacts and spirits? Sounds like something out of a fairy tale." "It does," Harold admits, meeting her gaze. "But tell me this: how do you explain three healthy people dying peacefully in their sleep, without cause or warning? How do you explain the clocks stopping all over town, digital devices included? How do you explain the symbol carved into their palms?" No one answers. The room falls silent, heavy with unspoken fears. "I don't expect you to believe me," Harold continues softly, "but I owe it to Emily, to Lucas and Lily, to make sure this never happens again. That's why I've destroyed the clock and scattered its pieces far and wide. So long as those fragments remain apart, the curse cannot return." After the meeting, Harold drives alone under the cover of night, crisscrossing state lines to fulfill his promise. At each stop, he buries a fragment of the clock in remote locations: beneath a gnarled oak tree in Maine, beside a rushing river in New Hampshire, deep within the sands of Cape Cod. Each act feels like laying down a piece of the past, severing ties to a legacy too dark to endure. As he scatters the final shard atop a windswept cliff overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, Harold allows himself a moment of reflection. The waves crash below, relentless and eternal, mirroring the flow of time itself. For the first time in days, he feels a flicker of peace. Perhaps the curse is truly broken. Perhaps the cycle has ended. But even as hope stirs within him, he can't shake the shadowy figure's words. Breaking them may unravel more than you intend. What consequences lie ahead? Only time will tell. Back in Willowbrook, Harold visits Emily's grave one last time. Fresh flowers adorn the headstone, placed there by neighbors paying their respects. Beside her name are two smaller stones bearing the names of Lucas and Lily. Harold kneels before them, placing a hand on the cool earth. "I'm sorry," he whispers, his voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't save you, but I promise, I've done everything I can to protect those who come after you." For a moment the wind stills, and Harold swears he hears faint laughter, the sound of children playing, carefree and joyful. Then it fades, carried away on the breeze. Weeks later, life in Willowbrook begins to return to normal, or as close to normal as it can be after such a loss. Neighbors rebuild their routines, finding solace in shared memories of Emily and her children. Strange occurrences cease, and the town breathes easier. The whispers of the tragedy linger like ghosts. Harold watches from afar, content to fade into the background. He knows the scars will heal slowly, but they will heal. And though he carries the weight of what he's learned, he also carries a newfound sense of purpose. In the quiet moments, when the wind rustles through the trees or the church bells toll at midnight, Harold sometimes thinks he hears Emily's voice, soft and distant. "Thank you." And he smiles, knowing he's done all he could. The air is crisp and still as mourners gather at Willowbrook Cemetery, their breath visible in the autumn chill. The graves of Emily, Lucas, and Lily lie side by side beneath a canopy of fiery red and gold leaves, the earth freshly turned, but already adorned with bouquets left by grieving friends and neighbors. Harold stands quietly among them, his hands clasped tightly around a small bundle of wildflowers he picked from the woods behind the Carter home. As the service draws to a close and the crowd begins to disperse, Harold lingers, stepping forward to place the flowers on each headstone. He kneels first at Emily's grave, whispering words too soft for anyone else to hear. Then he moves to Lucas's and Lily's, laying the blooms gently atop their names carved into stone. It's then that he notices it, a single red maple leaf drifting down from the sky, spinning lazily before coming to rest directly on Lily's grave. Harold freezes, his heart skipping a beat. The leaf is vibrant, its edges perfectly intact, untouched by decay despite the season's progression. It's identical to the ones Lucas and Lily used to press between the pages of books, treasures they'd gift to classmates or tuck into letters for distant relatives. Harold picks up the leaf, turning it over in his fingers. For a moment, he swears he feels warmth radiating from it, as though it carries the faintest trace of life. Memories flood back, their laughter echoing through the woods, their wide eyes filled with wonder as they spoke of the haunted well, their belief in something greater than themselves. Was this a sign, or simply coincidence, nature's way of reminding him of the fleeting beauty of life? Before Harold can decide, a gentle breeze stirs the trees above, sending another cascade of leaves spiraling down. But this time, amidst the rustling branches, he hears it, a faint giggle, light and melodic, carried on the wind like a melody half forgotten. He looks around, but the cemetery is nearly empty now, save for Maggie, who stands some distance away, watching him silently. She gives no indication of having heard anything unusual. "Lucas? Lily," Harold murmurs under his breath, feeling foolish, yet unable to stop himself. There's no reply, only the whisper of the wind and the crunch of fallen leaves beneath his feet. Yet as he straightens, clutching the red maple leaf in his hand, he feels an unexpected calm settle over him. Perhaps freedom wasn't just about breaking the curse, it was about finding peace within it. Perhaps the twins' laughter wasn't meant to haunt him, but to reassure him that they're truly free now, untethered from the clock's grip. Harold steps back, slipping the leaf into his coat pocket as he joins Maggie near the edge of the cemetery. She smiles weakly, her arms crossed against the cold. "They love these leaves," she says softly, nodding toward the maples overhead. "Always collecting them, pressing them. They said they were magic." "Maybe they were right," Harold replies, surprising even himself with the steadiness in his voice. Maggie tilts her head, studying him curiously. "Do you really believe that? That there's more out there?" Harold hesitates, glancing one last time at the trio of graves bathed in dappled sunlight. "I don't know what I believe anymore," he admits. "But I do know this. Love doesn't end when we say goodbye. And sometimes He pauses, patting the pocket where the leaf rests. Sometimes it finds ways to remind us. Maggie nods slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. Together they walk away, leaving the graves behind but carrying the memory of those who once brought so much light to their lives. As Harold and Maggie disappear down the winding cemetery path, the camera pans back to the graves. The red maple leaf lies undisturbed on Lily's headstone, catching the fading light of the setting sun. Above, the trees sway gently, releasing another shower of leaves that drift downward like whispers from beyond. Somewhere in the distance, children's laughter echoes faintly, carried on the wind. Months have passed since the tragedy in Willowbrook, and Harold has settled into a quiet rhythm once more. His study, a cozy room lined with bookshelves and smelling faintly of aged paper, is where he spends most evenings, reflecting on the case that changed everything. The antique clock's destruction brought closure to the town, but for Harold, questions linger like shadows at the edges of his mind. What truly happened to Emily and her children? Did destroying the clock break the curse, or merely delay it? And what did the shadowy figure mean when it warned of unraveling more than intended? These thoughts haunt him, though not bitterly. Instead, they serve as reminders of the fragility and resilience of human connection. One late evening, Harold sits alone in his chair, a steaming cup of tea resting on the side table beside him. The only sound is the steady ticking of his wall clock, an old, reliable timepiece he's owned for decades. Its rhythmic cadence has always been a source of comfort, grounding him in the present moment. But then, without warning, the ticking stops. Harold freezes, his gaze snapping upward to the clock mounted on the wall. Its hands hang motionless at 11:59 p.m., frozen just shy of midnight. A chill runs down his spine, though the fire crackling in the hearth fills the room with warmth. Before he can rise from his seat, a soft giggle breaks the silence, childlike and familiar. He turns slowly toward the far corner of the room, his breath catching in his throat. There, standing hand in hand, are Lucas and Lily, their forms translucent yet unmistakable. Their faces glow with the same serene smiles Harold had seen on their lifeless bodies months ago. "Lucas? Lily?" Harold whispers, his voice trembling. The twins don't speak, but their eyes sparkle with mischief and gratitude. For a brief moment, the air around them seems to shimmer, as if reality itself bends to accommodate their presence. Then, as quickly as they appeared, they vanish, leaving behind only the faint scent of autumn leaves and the lingering echo of laughter. Harold sits stunned, staring at the empty space where the twins had stood. His heart pounds, but strangely, he feels no fear, only a profound sense of reassurance. It's as though they've come not to haunt him, but to thank him. He glances back at the wall clock, its hands still frozen at 11:59 p.m. Rising slowly, he crosses the room and places a hand on its face, feeling the cool metal beneath his fingertips. Despite the stopped mechanism, there's an odd sense of peace emanating from it, a reminder that time, much like love, flows in ways we may never fully understand. Returning to his chair, Harold leans back, a soft smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Some mysteries, he realizes, are meant to remain unsolved, not because they're too dangerous or incomprehensible, but because they remind us of the beauty in the unknown. As the fire dwindles to embers and the room grows dim, Harold allows himself to close his eyes, listening to the silence. Though the wall clock remains stopped, he knows its purpose has been fulfilled. Emily and her children are at peace. Whatever force bound them together has released them, freeing their spirits to drift beyond the confines of fate. And while Harold may never fully grasp the nature of the curse or the keeper of time, he finds solace in knowing that some bonds transcend even death. In the end, perhaps that's all that matters.